Night laid its brief over Babylon like an official seal. Torches guttered along palace colonnades, and stewards whispered the day's figures while the king's scribes closed their tablets. The city sounded like what it was, an office in the shape of an empire. Files had other names: provinces, treasuries, grain ships, canal gates. Somewhere in that maze worked an old exile named Daniel, promoted for being the man who found the missing coins before anyone else knew they were missing. He did not belong to any faction. He did not sell access to signatures. His reports were dull and correct, and in a building where dull correctness could ruin a dozen careers, Daniel had enemies. The new organization chart made it official. 3 chief administrators above 120 satraps, and Daniel was about to be first among the 3. His reputation for incorruptibility reads like a virtue on stone, but feels like a threat at the table where favors move. Colleagues hunted for something prosecutable: embezzlement, nepotism, a bribe. But every ledger page came up clean. They changed strategy. If the life was sound, the only charge left was the shape of his conscience. They watched and learned his habit. At set hours, he opened the lattice of his upper room toward Jerusalem and knelt to pray. No witnesses were needed. The city watched everything. They built a case backwards: start with the sentence, then write the statute. In a whispering caucus, they drafted a royal injunction for 30 days. No petition to any god or man except the king. The title sang with loyalty. The footnote carried the knife: violators to the lion's den. The king, who loved admiration and smooth consensus, signed the finished decree with the phrase that made it iron: the law of the Medes and Persians, which may not be revoked. Runners posted the order in marketplaces. That evening, Daniel opened his window as always. He did not lower his voice. Crime requires intent, they told themselves, and here it was, deliberate, repetitive, unashamed. They burst the room and found what they had come to find: a man on his knees, guilty of prayer. Arrest was a performance. They marched him through the streets, letting rumor do the work of chains. In the council chamber, the administrators set the trap's teeth. Did you not sign an injunction, O king, that for 30 days no petition be made to any but you? He nodded, pleased with his own law. Then the spring. Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, pays you no heed. He asks from his God 3 times a day. The king understood whose hands had guided his own. He spent the day wandering the palace like a defendant who cannot sit, asking whether a law can be law and still allow a man to breathe. The answer came back the same: what is sealed is sealed. Sunset is when judgments harden. The king ordered Daniel brought to the place the ordinance named. May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you, he said, a benediction that sounded like an admission of malpractice. The pit was older than the king: stone steps, an iron grate, the smell of straw. Daniel descended without argument. The lid came down, a stone rolled to its seat. The king pressed his signet into the clay. Then every official present added his own. The law was a circle now, every ring consenting. The palace did not feast that night. Musicians were sent away. The king lay awake, learning the difference between power and authority. He had power to sign. The law now had authority over him. He stared at the ceiling and heard the rumor of lions the way a man hears his conscience, soft, then too loud to ignore. Somewhere beneath his floors, a foreigner's faith shared a room with teeth. At first light, he ran to the vault with a voice already breaking. He called down, not as a judge, but as someone who wants to be forgiven. Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God been able to deliver you from the lions? The pause that followed took 1 lifetime's length. Then a voice came up steady, like minutes drafted onto a docket. O King, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him, and also before you, O king. I have done no wrong." It was legal language, as if he had spent the night writing his own acquittal. The king shouted for the seals to be broken and for ropes to be lowered. Daniel emerged without a scratch, as if the night had been rumor. His colleagues' faces did not change. Conspirators train features to neutrality. The king's did. He gave the order no one wanted to hear: take the men who accused Daniel, and by court custom their households, and deliver them to the same pit. Justice in that empire was reflexive. The pit becomes whoever brought you to it. The lions, silent all night, recovered their voices before the conspirators reached the floor. After punishment came paperwork. Clerks wrote a new decree. The king dictated slowly, choosing each word as if locking a door. He commended Daniel's God not for novelty, but for jurisdiction, signs, wonders, kingdom without end. It read less like theology than a public notice, authority asserted over beasts, officials, timing itself. The empire learned a new term, deliverance, and pinned it to a case file. What had they meant to prove by the first law? Not loyalty. They already owned the courtiers. They wanted the precision only statute can supply. A dagger leaves fingerprints. A decree leaves none. The conspiracy was a lawyer's crime, clean hands, murderous outcome, an alibi engraved in cuneiform. They had shopped for a forum, drafted a bill, rushed it past the one man who could stop it, and arranged a midnight hearing in a room with no witness box. It would make a fine lecture on the misuse of process if the stone had not been real. Daniel returned to work. That is how these stories end when told as law. A man at his desk, signing receipts, answering dispatches, refusing bribes with the same quiet his enemies mistook for arrogance. He did not sue or petition for damages. He wrote nothing but what was required. Yet his presence filed a motion in every office that had colluded against him. The case was now precedent, and precedent changes behavior. Some learned to fear lions for the first time. Others learned to fear laws that roar on command. Still, a pit opened is not easily forgotten. The king's sleeplessness wrote itself into gossip and then policy. He grew slower to sign. The men who had pressed clay with him learned to read the room for traps of their own making, and the public, hearing edicts shouted in the square, practiced a new kind of listening, not only the words, but the places a statute could be aimed. What then was the crime? A committee would say conspiracy to pervert justice by legislation. Priests would say blasphemy weaponized. Old men at the gate would say envy writ large. Daniel called it by a plainer name, wrongdoing. He used the word when he told the king, "I have done no wrong," a small sentence that should have made the first decree impossible. It did not. So the judgment came from elsewhere, and the courtroom became a den, and a night turned into a verdict. Every empire writes its character into its procedures. This one learned under seal and stone that force without wisdom is hunger, and a law that forgets the person it touches will one day remember the claw. The record closes with a strange balance. A king who cannot sleep, a defendant whose pulse never quickened, and a statute book that now includes an exception written by a hand no scribe commanded. The lions kept their silence long enough to teach it. Thank you for listening to Divine Crime. Subscribe for more true stories from the most dangerous book ever written.